Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about Jim Crow laws in the United States. You may or may not know much about it, but today I want to talk about the origins and the lasting legacy of the Jim Crow laws, because schools just don't teach this. So what were Jim Crow laws? Jim Crow laws were a set of state and local rules in the United States, primarily in the South, that enforced racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans from the late 1800s to the mid-1960s. These laws were named after a racist caricature of a black man from the 19th century minstrel show, symbolizing the demeaning and oppressive nature of the system. But who was the original Jim Crow? Throughout the 1830s and 40s, the white entertainer Thomas Dartmouth Rice performed a popular song and dance act supposedly modeled after an enslaved man. He named the character Jim Crow. Rice darkened his face, acted like a buffoon, and spoke with an exaggerated and distorted imitation of African American vernacular English. In his Jim Crow persona, he also sang Negro ditties, such as Jump Jim Crow.
About and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
Rice was not the first white comic to perform in blackface, but he was the most popular of his time, touring both the United States and England. As a result of Rice's success, Jim Crow became a common stage persona for white comedians' blackface portrayals of African Americans. That information comes from the Jim Crow Museum. You should really check out their website. How did Jim Crow laws start in the United States? After the Civil War and the end of slavery, the U.S. passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to grant freedom, citizenship, and voting rights to African Americans. However, many white Southerners resisted these changes. By the 1890s, Southern states began passing Jim Crow laws to legally separate black and white people in public spaces like schools, restaurants, buses, and even drinking fountains. These laws were upheld by the Supreme Court's Plessy versus Ferguson decision in 1896, separate but equal facilities, though in reality, black facilities were far inferior. What did the Jim Crow laws do? The laws enforced segregation in almost every aspect of life. For example, black and white people had to use separate restrooms, water fountains, and waiting rooms. Schools were segregated, with black schools receiving far fewer resources. Interracial marriage was banned. Voting rights were restricted through literacy tests, poll taxes, and intimidation tactics. Beyond the laws, African Americans faced widespread violence, including lynchings, and were often denied fair trials or justice. The Civil Rights Movement. In the 1950s and 60s, activists like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and many others led the Civil Rights Movement to challenge Jim Crow laws. Landmark events such as the Montgomery bus boycott and the March on Washington and the Selma to Montgomery marches brought national attention to the injustice. Finally, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ended legal segregation and protected voting rights. The legacy of Jim Crow. While Jim Crow laws are no longer in effect, their legacy persists in systematic racism, economic inequality, and ongoing struggles for racial justice in the U.S. Understanding this history is crucial to addressing the challenges that remain today. Thanks again for watching, and please go do some research about Jim Crow laws. It's a very important subject, and many schools across the country are refusing to teach subjects like this. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.